Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Ogie Sheehy from ViClarity. How you doing?
Doing good, thanks, Toby. Doing great.
Listen, lovely to speak to you. Been having a bit of a chat beforehand. You're over in Ireland at the moment. We've seen sort of I guess a sort of slight difference from the UK in terms of how the lockdowns being policed. I know you're not back in the office yet, but talking about edging back there. We'll come on to all of that in a minute. But first and foremost, really interesting business you've got over there at ViClarity. Tell us a little bit about what's happening and what you guys do.
Sure. Thanks, Toby. Great to be here with you this morning. So ViClarity, we're a company based in the south of Ireland. So we're down in the beautiful County Kerry, which makes us a little bit unique in its own right. Gives us an advantage. But I guess we're a company that we specialize in GRC software, which is governance, risk and compliance. We provide software to the financial services industry. We do also provide software to healthcare, but I guess within financial services, we operate in insurance, in asset fund management, with banking, credit unions, and insurance would be our main sectors that we operate in. And really it's risk management, audit software, compliance software, just to kind of help people with that burden of regulatory compliance.
And so, and you mentioned it there. It's down in Kerry, a lovely part of the world. And you say it gives you a slight advantage. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Toby, because my career has led me to from Kerry, originally born and reared, to Dublin, where I spent most of my working career in kind of corporate multinationals. Lived in the US for a number of years, moved back again to Dublin, and then had an opportunity to set up a business here in Kerry. The advantages, I think, are self-explanatory. The beautiful weather that we don't unfortunately have outside the window today. I'm very passionate about setting up a business in Kerry. There's a lot of great talent, some fantastic, the IT, the university here is great. And again, the IT, the Institute of Technology, has now just been awarded university status, which is great. But I think it's just a work-life balance. The Dublin life is great, and there's a lot of buzz in Dublin. But in Kerry, you're close to the beach. You're 10 minutes from any beach, really. So you can work a good long day's work, run an international business actually, and go for a swim after work. So that
sounds like an ideal way of looking at it. Yeah. And you said, and it's interesting because it is an international business, right? You've got offices in the UK and the US. How are you seeing the differences in that? I mean, it can be challenging running your international businesses with different parts of this pandemic at various different stages throughout it. What's the spread from what you're seeing? How are each individual location dealing with all of this?
It's very different, and it's funny because across each of the different jurisdictions, Toby, as you mentioned, different countries are dealing with it differently. But actually, when you look in the US, each state uniquely, based on its governor, is dealing with it differently as well.
Absolutely,
so that's bringing an interesting dynamic to the business, and a dynamic that, we're fortunate that we've been able to pivot and kind of just work with it and use it to our advantage. But, a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people are still, suffering from it because, people have loved ones or family members or even work colleagues who are affected by it. So it's tough, but I think people are doing a tremendous job adapting to it, as are we. We're making the best out of the situation that we're in.
Yeah, and I think it is an interesting thing. It's no one wants to crow about this, but everyone who I've been speaking to has generally sort of done well through the process. I think the sort of RegTech and FinTech and financial arena has been less affected than many others. And that's fun. That's great to see. And companies have really innovated and provided, real value to their customers. That sort of GRC world in particular, in my opinion, has been very, very robust through it. Tell us what you've seen in the space.
Definitely, I must admit there's a substantial uptake in interest from the GRC space during the pandemic. I think people who may historically have had, risk management processes and governance processes in their businesses, where they were important. Now, as a result of the pandemic, your incident planning, your business continuity plan, which for a lot of people, was in a drawer that they dust off maybe once a year, it's now become reality. And people, I suppose, who maybe didn't have the time in busy office environments in London and Dublin to see software, take demos, they now have a bit more time in their hands. So I think there's two pieces to it, Toby. I think one is there's a more pronounced need to have tools in place, tools that can help with collaboration, tools that can help people who are now remote from one another to help them be more efficient in what they do, tools that help prompt them through a tough time. So in particular, I mentioned the business continuity plan, that holds, and we have a product around that in particular, substantial uptake in interest there. And then I think just from a culture and a personal perspective, people have more time. They're now at home, and we're doing multiple demos on a daily basis, which is excellent. But you have people from all over the UK, in fact, all over the world, Singapore, the US, who are all at home. So we're all dialing in, and there's dogs barking and delivery men coming to the front door, and it's just become reality. And it's interesting because nowadays people just take it for granted. Like, it's not a problem. We were on a conversation just last week, and we were closing a few contractual terms with the clients. And just on the other side, the lawyers were all, talking about terms and conditions. And they said, "Excuse me, actually, DHL are at my door delivering a package." And it's just, it's funny in many ways, but just people get on with it and just get the job done now.
Yeah, I think it's sort of humanized it a lot for people. It's so much less formal, and actually it's a nicer way to do business, and you sort of see a little insight into people's lives a little bit more, and it's definitely a better way of doing certain aspects of it, or a better way of doing business, right?
I think so, and in the GRC space, I like what we're seeing in the market is absolutely no doubt in Ireland. So our primary markets will be Dublin and probably London, or the greater UK and the US. And there's definitely an uptake in interest, an uptake in people who are now needing and wanting to consider, the onboarding of technology. So yeah, it's been great. It's been great for us.
I think that's that's an interesting thing about customer. Every business that I've seen really thrive through this has as cliched as it sounds, put the customer very much at the heart of their strategy. And it's it's always been important. I think this has really overemphasized that. A lot of that has sort of been around the understanding the pain points that customers are going through, and then providing solutions to that. I know that's something that you guys have really put a lot of thought into. Tell us a little bit about how you're helping those pain points and what they are in the space around GRC right now.
Sure. I mean, a lot of what we're seeing in the market, and we've seen this for years, Toby, to be honest, is it never ceases to amaze me that some of the biggest companies in the world will run their businesses on Excel spreadsheets. And where I'm not a huge fan of Excel spreadsheets. I use it every day myself, but
you can't get rid of them.
Absolutely. I can't get rid of them. We never will. And they serve a great purpose. Don't get me wrong. But when you see some very large financial institutions, with some of their core business in terms of their risk and their compliance hanging off of spreadsheets, in many cases, you wouldn't be surprised to hear with macros written in the background, and the guy that wrote the macro has left the business and gone somewhere else, and now they're left with this legacy tool that they just don't know how to use. And and I joke about that, but that's reality. That's what's happening out there. So for us, we're there to solve that problem, help with that pain point where we can move people off of Excel. It's not a 2-year, and $500,000 type implementation. This is a quick in. It's a modular type approach. So if you've got a pain point right now where you've got this Excel sheet that's, is no longer functional, we take it and we move companies away from the manual processes of emailing spreadsheets around an organization, and we put it into a technology platform. And that technology platform then allows the users to get notifications from the tool, not need to open and save versions of Excel, but enter information, risk and compliance and audit information into the tool. And it's all then collaboratively collected in the system and, reportable for, FCA regulators or Central Bank of Ireland or boards or committees. So it's that whole piece of the pain being, we're manual, we have these cumbersome processes that take up a lot of time. And the other piece as well, Toby, that's interesting is accountability. It's very difficult to have a true culture of accountability in an organization if it's dependent upon manual Excel type processes. I email you a sheet this morning, you open it up, you're typing into flat Excel spreadsheets and sending it on to your colleague and onto your colleague just to get the information back. It's a huge pain point. So if you can implement something that drives efficiencies in how that's done, then that's a huge benefit, and that's really where we're seeing the uptake.
Yeah, cost, efficiency, usability, productivity. These are some of the main buzzwords we're hearing at the moment, and the predominant issues that people are trying to manage. And that's you can say exactly the same in 2008 and the years around that. I think when things get like this, you're looking for products and solutions that can really drive those sort of 4 or 5 main issues. Are you seeing any other sort of problems out there in the marketplace at the moment, and common themes in your clients?
Yeah, I think the other angle, I think, which is interesting as well, is that people now need to, because people are remote, people need tools now to be able to collaborate with each other. And that's key. If you're in an office environment, you can walk up to somebody's desk and say, hey, will you, what's this? And people do sometimes, operate in that mode, whereas now people are remote. They're all over the country and they're depending on an internet connection, which sometimes mightn't be great. So if you can provide, and you mentioned it, it's simplicity, something simple, something that's effective, something that's going to drive efficiencies in doing the core job that you have to do anyway, because you're obligated to do it in the world of regulatory compliance. And if you can make that easy and give someone back time and save them money, then that's huge. And it's, as I mentioned, it's collaborative. So if you're trying to prepare a board presentation, board meetings, still have to go on. We had a board meeting in our company in the US just a couple of weeks ago, and we all did it remotely. So it's just tools like that to help people collaborate better and easier to give them the end results that they need.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point in that, because you mentioned sort of the growth and expansion of the sort of business from Kerry that's sort of now seeing itself in the UK and the US, etc. That sort of growth. What sort of facilitated that growth for you? How's it continued through the pandemic, and what's the anticipation beyond? And what's that meant for you in terms of the challenges with headcount and onboarding and recruitment and all that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and there's a lot in that question. So
I know. I'll ask you 6 in one and throw it over the fence to you. Catch that.
Absolutely. So I guess and it's a great question, because as a business, Toby, we've always been operating here in Kerry. We've always been growing, I guess, maybe a little bit more organically than your average. No VC funding. We didn't go and take in a couple of million and try to blow it out of the water. We grew the business organically, and that comes with benefits, because you learn the market, you really become a subject matter expert in the space. You mentioned it earlier. One of my main philosophies would be, your team and your customer. And if you get those right, you form the basis of a tremendous business. And that's what, I've done with the business over the last 12 years. And I suppose then in terms of growth, the US expansion has always been challenging. It's a difficult thing to do for a little business here in the south of Ireland, or for any business, and trying to really crack that nut, it's a big challenge. And I've done a number of things over the years. I've hired people on the ground directly in the US, and it's just not worked out. Expensive risks to take, but one has to try that. So just in February of this year, 2020, we merged with a company in the US who. Our philosophy has always been to partner with like-minded people, both from a cultural perspective and a skill complement. And we got introduced to this company, a company called PolicyWorks, based out of Des Moines in Iowa. And just as the conversation started to progress, we realized there was a phenomenal synergy between not just the people, wonderful people, a real alignment of the culture of their team and ours, but just in terms of the strategy of the business, the vision for the future. So they're a company that specializes in regulatory compliance consulting in financial services in the US. And so they service that client base. That's the market we want to sell to in the US. So we merged both businesses just pre-COVID. So I guess one can say we were lucky to get it over the line. But I think, but then that brought with it challenges, because when you try to integrate team, so there's 18 of that team in the US, there's a team of 14 here in Ireland, and try to get into integrating two companies when you can't physically be there is quite a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's difficult at the best of times, isn't it?
It is, but we came out of the traps, hit the ground running, and the team in the US have been phenomenal. They've been really supportive of us, and likewise, my team here, and people have just gotten on with it. And it's just, you'd wonder if we weren't in a pandemic, would it be as seamless? But it's just been fantastic, and then we've seen uptake because we now have a lead into the market in the US. Des Moines is a very interesting city because it's one of the top cities in the world for insurance, which is
right? Okay.
which I didn't know,
Yeah.
but I know now. And it's, you know, it's where we want to go. It's where we want to grow the business. It's one of our core markets. So it's been great.
Yeah. And with regards to that, a merger of equals, or you've taken the controlling stake, or them? How's that work?
No, it's kind of, we merged both businesses together, so I'm a part owner of the company as well. So
Yeah.
it wasn't an acquisition. So it's a real good synergy, and we've kind of put the sum of the two parts together to kind of go to market. So yeah, it's great.
If you can get the sort of dynamics of that, I think it's a great way of growing and building, right?
It really is, and especially when there's such close alignment, and that alignment between the core strategies of the companies just was a good match.
And they remain the individual names, or have they merged in terms of?
Yeah, but currently at the minute, obviously we've a lot of work to do in terms of our integration activity, but we're still trading as ViClarity and will continue to do so. Because we've got a very established brand in Europe, and to a lesser extent in the US on the technology side. And one of the core areas, I suppose, Toby, is we've remained as a technology firm. And many years back, when we started working with credit unions in Ireland, insurance in Ireland, you know, we were doing a lot of Central Bank of Ireland type of regulatory compliance software. You know, the question came up, you know, should we be offering consulting services as well? And, you know, at the time I chose not to go down that road because, you know, we're a technology firm by nature. So the complement of the services now team with the technology team, I think gives you two real core areas. So it's really good.
Absolutely. And what's that mean for growth moving forward? So you're there, you've got this platform, as you said, you sort of tapped at growth in the US. This gives you the sort of fuel to accelerate that a little bit further. What are the plans there?
So the plans are exponential growth in the US market. There's a strong focus for me personally and for my team to grow that US market. And we have been very fortunate. We've had a great year so far, even in the European market, both Ireland and UK, in our core spaces, insurance, fund management, and credit unions. And I suppose with that in mind, you know, we want to take the same markets and just expedite the growth trajectory into the US. So we are recruiting, and we have already recruited new team members in the US since we've merged, which is great. And you know, we've got a phenomenal team of shared services organizations, you know, sales team and marketing teams that just know the market, know the space, and combining that expertise on the ground, Toby, with our, you know, leading edge technology gives you a great route to market. So the plans are aggressive, and we're certainly on track to achieve a good end of year.
Exciting times. So as you say, look, there's differences state to state, country to country, and all of these things, and it's led me to something which I always find absolutely fascinating, which is, you know, if someone had asked me 4 months ago when this sort of kicked off that none of your clients would have anyone in their office, and you know, some companies would grow, you know, and double in some instances their headcount during that stage, I'd have been absolutely gobsmacked. I'd have thought it would have been a complete shutdown until we got through this and been back in the office in a month's time. That was where I set myself for. And obviously it's been, you know, unprecedented is an overused word, I know, but we certainly haven't seen this. But I've been blown away with how well people have onboarded and managed that recruitment process and continued to sort of stand by their guns with regards to, we're going to grow, and we have this this client fuel thing, and we're not going to just sit here and be a victim and wait for everything to pass. There's companies who've absolutely stolen the initiative and got access to a great talent pool because of it, and it's almost universal with everyone I'm speaking to. There's been growth of some description. Tell me a little bit about your experience with onboarding remotely, how you've managed that, how you've managed it well, and how it's worked for the business.
Yeah, it's a great question and a very relevant question, because we are currently in a recruitment drive right now, inundated with applications from all over the world, would you believe? And again, you know, it's interesting because, as I mentioned at the start of the interview, you know, I'm a very passionate Kerry man, South of Ireland guy, and we have an initiative that we've always been trying to run for Kerry businesses to try and attract people from, you know, from overseas back home, if there's any, you know, people that may have moved away to Australia or the US, you know, to tell people there are jobs, there are careers in Kerry. So it's just been really interesting, because we've gone to market for a number of roles due to our expansion and due to the growth of the business. And people are just brilliant. You know, you just get people on Zoom calls, just like we're doing right now. You know, you're interviewing in a different way. So people are very open and great conversations. And people have adapted because, you know, you can't sit around and wait. You know, we did a couple of interviews face-to-face in the office environment recently. And you know, again, you know, you have a big boardroom, you have one person at one end of the boardroom and I'm at the other end, and you know, you're having that debate. But it's possible to do it. We've just offered a role last week, and we have a new staff member onboarding on Monday of next week, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, did some interviews yesterday, and hopefully we'll offer another job by the end of this week. So, you know, it's very possible to do it. I think people are comfortable to realize, you know, it's going to be a different environment. You know, there may be a bit of intensive, you know, 1 day a week for the moment just to get in and do some product training. But the reality, Toby, is, as I said earlier, you know, there's ways and means and tools and processes now that allow a staff member to onboard as successfully as they would if they were in the office by doing that remotely.
Yeah, and even more so, I think companies are actually, yeah, I think sometimes what gets taken for granted once people go through very, very detailed, you know, interview processes, and they spend a lot of time on their employer brand, and they get to the actual bit where they've made the deal, and it's almost then everything gets forgotten, and they just assume that people come in there and they sit at their desk and there's sort of haphazard at best onboarding processes. And what's been great about this is I think people have been getting far, far better onboarding processes, because people have had to think a little bit more about it. They've had to think what does a great onboarding experience look like? How do you bring someone in and make them feel part of a team despite being fragmented from it? I think that's really helped. Tell us a little bit about some of the tips that you've had that have really worked for you to make your new starters feel part of the team in the most extraordinary of times.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that is really important, you know, the culture fit and the feeling of someone coming on board, feeling part of a team, not feeling I'm sitting in my mother's sitting room every day for the next year, you know. It's that integration piece, is trying to make them feel part of the team. So one of the things we do is every morning at 9 a.m, we do the whole team come on Zoom, and we keep it lighthearted. You know, we talk about, you know, what's ahead for the day. If there's any big news, we'll share big news. And that could be, you know, Liverpool got, you know, presented the trophy last night, which, and not being a Liverpool fan, didn't really work. So
being a Liverpool fan, I didn't even know it happened.
Big Chelsea fan, and after the game last night, you know, kind of rubbed it in two fronts for me. But needless to say, I didn't turn up to the 9 o'clock call this morning. But anyway, I think it's just, you know, that connection, bringing somebody in, making them feel, you know, meeting everybody. It's on webcam, but, you know, having that kind of connection in the morning. We do one at 5 p.m. at the end of the day as well, just to say, how was your day? Any challenges? Do you need any help and support? Any news, good, bad, or otherwise? And, you know, on a Friday evening, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we signed a big deal, and we were delighted to sign it. It was a year in the pipeline. So, you know, we sent everyone a €25 voucher, all for one voucher, and said, you know, go buy your beverage of choice, and, you know, we'll cheers to the deal at the end of the working day. And, you know, it's little small things like that. On a Friday, we've had on many occasions where people have, you know, the call is usually 20 minutes long. People are there for an hour, and we're talking about Netflix and what's the next best series to watch. And it's just making it more human, and it's just kind of, it's a team. And at the end of the day, your team is everything around you. But for a new starter to come into that kind of environment, you want them to get into it and to feel part of the team, and to give them opportunity to connect in, and then to connect in individually with everyone, to, you know, just introduce themselves. But to get them then, you know, hitting the ground running, to give them some tasks that they're not sitting there. You know what it's like when you start a new job. It can be the first days you're kind of going, how many more times can I refresh my email? There's nothing coming in. It's about giving them tangible tasks, working with somebody or shadowing somebody where they can actually see, you know, I've got a bucket of time. And I think you need to be very cognizant of that when you bring somebody new on board. Where in the office you can walk up and, you know, put your hand on their shoulder and say, you know, is everything going okay? Or you can see that they're, you know, scratching their head and a little bit bored. Whereas remotely you won't see that. So you need to have a very specific agenda of what they're going to do, at least for the first couple of days. And those kinds of little tips make it a lot easier for someone to integrate and to kind of feel part of the team.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you're at that sort of interesting size of company where I imagine it's so well, I know it's so important to have a culture, and just hearing you speak, it's very clear that it's team first sort of stuff, right? And
Yeah.
culture is so important to businesses of that sort of size.
Yeah.
And when you've got that's overnight disbanded, it can be a very difficult thing to sort of deal with, right? And to keep that going and to bring people into that and make them feel part of that culture. I speak to a number of different businesses who've built their whole DNA around the tribe. And I think, there's one business in particular I can think of who are so tribal, and they do it brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. And and I see people sort of, tweeting about it and putting themselves on LinkedIn with, the branded clothing, and it's very, very, in the most positive sense cult-like. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're a business now where they are 30-40% bigger, of which people haven't been exposed to that same sort of stuff. And it's those things you're talking about, the vouchers, the time talking about Netflix, that sort of collaborative together time, that I think has been really, really important. And I think it's going to make it even stronger when people do ultimately come back to the office. And I think the likelihood is there's more of a hybrid future for companies.
Absolutely. And the other thing, Toby, is like businesses need to realize that, and businesses need to just roll with the punches. You can't down tools and make this a problem. You just gotta. It's the same in technology. You just gotta pivot. If you're in a market, the market has gone south for whatever reasons that might be. The businesses that will survive and come out successful at the end are those businesses that will pivot with their technology. It's the same. It's the same with your team and with your culture. I mean, culture is absolutely number one for us, and it's a great tool as well in terms of attracting talent and retention of your good talents. And if you get that right, then the rest will follow. I mean, obviously you need good people, you need good products, you need, a solid market and all those normal things. But, if you get your team right, and they're thinking right with you, then they help you to pivot and they fuel you on.
Yeah. Let's touch on that sort of pivot. I mean, the market has changed. I imagine, despite the fact you guys have done well, I imagine there's different things that come to you. Pivoting in some instances in tech has been a dirty word. In other instances, it's been absolutely essential. Where's your take, and what have you done, and how have you sort of adapted and been agile to the opportunity?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did at an early stage, Toby, was we realized that there was going to be a period of time when businesses that we're trying to sell to, trying to get conversations with, certainly new businesses onboarding are not going to have time to talk to us. So there was a down tools period when this hit, and that's a fact of reality. So we made a decision in the business to, what, people are struggling in a tough time. The last thing they need is to have somebody trying to ring them up going, hey, can I talk to you for a minute about software? So there was a cooling off period there when pandemic hit. And I suppose during that period, we had some internal conversations and we realized that, hang on a minute, maybe rather than trying to sell something to somebody, is there something we can pivot to do that will actually benefit them right now? So we had a VCP tool, as I mentioned earlier in our chat, a business continuity planning tool, and we actually pivoted to adapt that to pandemic. So we looked at what people needed to do, so we were asking ourselves, what drama are people going through right now? And for us, 14 people, to deploy people to home, you got to think about your desk location, your seat, your posture, all the bits that we take for granted. Maybe others don't. So we thought, if we can build our tool and make it a pandemic tool and actually go to market and offer it for free. So we went out to the market and we said to our customers and to non-customers, we have a tool that will walk you through best practice in terms of steps of how to deal with business continuity planning in this pandemic. And that was it was a business decision that we made, Toby, knowing that, there's going to be a lull in the market at the time, but hopefully that will come full circle. But the second part was that, it just felt good to do something to help people who had a need at the time. We then took the concept to the US actually, and our new team in the US thought that's a great idea. So we offered it out to the US as well. And we said to our US, in particular credit union clients, because that would be one of our core markets in the US, this is something that we want to offer. And we had huge uptake and positive feedback from it.
I think that's, I've heard it, a couple of times, but not everyone's done it. They sort of went into overdrive sales mode and and sort of turned a lot of people off. People didn't want to be sold to at that sort of stage, and to an extent, it's probably still the case.
Yeah.
But that sort of mentality of how can we add value and how can we be there and be front of mind, I think has served businesses brilliantly, and it's so clever, and it's so well done. It's brilliant to hear businesses thinking down those sort of lines.
And the thing is, it will pay dividends in the future at some point. Somebody down the road would say, I remember you gave us that tool for free. It was great. It was easy to use. We got great value from it in a time when we were really stressed out. And if a call comes in 6 months or a year from now, then they may be more inclined to pick up the phone and have that conversation.
It's who said karma wasn't a tactic.
There you go. Absolutely.
Listen, it's there's so much I could talk about this. It's a brilliant conversation, but I'm also aware of the clock. So I'm gonna finish off with a last piece, if I may, which is this is an interesting time of year with people sort of starting to think about their next budgets and 2021 and such like. And there's going to be so much that you're going to be at the cornerstone of that and helping businesses through all that sort of stage. Who should be talking to you, and what should they be talking to you about, and how are you going to add value to them? Another 3 questions in one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people right now who, just as you described, are looking at budgets. They're looking at, is there a budget this year? Is it a next year budget? We're engaging with a number of UK-based insurance firms right now, and it would be the chief risk officers, chief compliance officers, heads of internal audit. And actually, it's interesting because it's not as much hard sales; it's as much, can you help us put together a business case, so that we can take that internally to get budget approved for these tools. And we're doing that actually with a number of customers, and it's just more of a partnership approach than a hard sales approach. So I think for people that are looking to, as we come out of the pandemic, there's still an opportunity there for people to need that type of technology, that type of tool set, to make it more efficient and to let them do things better and quicker and faster. So they're the kinds of people, certainly, as I mentioned, insurance companies, asset management firms, kind of mid-tier UK banks, people that are looking to either get budget by the end of this year, and some have. There are some that have budget to be spent by the end of this year. Others that are planning to get budget approved for next year. So we're very happy to not be in heavy sales mode, but to actually partner with people who are interested in our expertise in terms of what is involved in implementing software like this. What are the key steps that need to be considered? What are the internal resource requirements potentially? And what sort of numbers would I need to be thinking about for an enterprise-wide? And again, it's kind of interesting that people are now looking for more of an enterprise-wide system. People are less interested in individual kind of bits from multiple different vendors. And I think that end-to-end side, people are certainly showing more interest in that. So they're the kinds of people I think we should be talking with. And there's definitely an appetite out there. As I mentioned, we're having a number of those conversations where rather than going in to do a hard sale, it's more the planning for them internally socializing a proposal to take forward to try and allocate budget either for this year or for next year.
It sounds like they should definitely be doing that. It's fascinating to hear about the business. It sounds like it's going brilliantly well. How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way of doing that?
So ViClarity.com is our website, and it's ViClarity.com. Or my email is ogie.sheehy, ogie.sheehy @ViClarity.com.
Ogie, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thanks so much for all of the insight, and glad it's been going so well. Keep up the good work, and thanks for joining us on the show today.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Toby. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks you all for watching, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.